619 all this week, Decision 2004. We're taking a closer look at the issues that could determine who the next president is. In today's edition of Election 101, which is what we're calling it, the woman vote and the black vote. Why are Bush and Kerry both courting women voters so hard? Our guest today is Melissa Harris-Lacewell, an author and political science professor at the University of Chicago and a mom of a 2.5-year-old and an expert on race and gender issues. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
At this early hour.
No problem.
With some cogent thoughts we hope that you can impart to us this morning. Let's talk about first the woman vote and why are both candidates courting female voters so hard? Can they determine the outcome of this election, do you think?
Well, women, interestingly, have generally not voted as a bloc. In other words, women are so diverse as a group, white women, black women, younger women, older women, that the question is really which women will define the vote. So, for example, Bush is leading very strongly with married women. Kerry is leading very strongly with unmarried younger women. Kerry is leading in the swing states with women, whereas Bush is leading overall. So can they determine it? Yeah, but it's going to really matter which women are coming out to vote.
Let's get your read on the Senate race very quickly.
Absolutely.
What happened here this year? We have two African-American candidates, both articulate men, both well-educated. Why one so high and one so low in the polls?
Well, I mean, I guess the easy answer would be, well, because one's an Illinois native and the other one is an outsider. But I think it's more than that. Obama was able to craft a grassroots campaign that was very broad-based. He was able to talk about being an African-American candidate without kind of making the people downstate feel uncomfortably concerned that he might be overly focused on the urban issues of Chicago.
Why? How did he do that?
Well, I think he did it with very careful language. We didn't know, even in the summer, that this guy could win a primary election, much less that he'd be leading by 50 percentage points.
You're talking about the summer before the primary now.
I'm talking about the summer of the primary. We thought he might not even take it. And he was able to do it, I think, through an enthusiastic grassroots campaign that said, I am a state senator who has really cared about a broad group of people here. Part of the reason I love this race so much is, again, these three debates that put two Harvard-educated African-American men running for state office against each other to have conversations about questions of conscience and policy. I just don't think it gets any better than that. And the one thing I think Alan Keyes is absolutely right on is he says the African-American voice needs to be central to our understanding of politics. That, in fact, if we tell the story of black Americans, it will often shift our entire focus of thinking about what the American story is. Now, the story that Alan Keyes tells about black folks, I think, is one that for the most part does not resonate very well in African American communities. But I think that actually if we were very fair and really looked at both of these candidates outside of kind of what these predispositions were, I think it would be stunning how conservative both of them are. I don't think...
How do you say Barack Obama is conservative?
Oh, you know, here's somebody who is much more Clinton-esque than Jesse Jackson. So just in the sense of the traditional history of African-American political action, which has generally been very confrontational, very progressive. Now, not to say that Barack Obama is not progressive, he certainly is, but he toes the Democratic Party line in a way that is very new and, of course, necessary for a state election. So I think that both of them are pretty far to the right of where traditional black politics has been, but certainly Barack Obama resonates much more with African-American communities than Alan Keyes does.
That's pure a vicious attack against homosexuals.
If you can't know who your sisters and brothers are, there is no way you could avoid having sexual relations with them.
That's just one of the highlights of a very contentious debate. Joining us now with reaction to the debate is Melissa Harris-Lacewell. She's an assistant professor of political science at the University of Chicago. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Everybody knows where these two guys stand. One's way left, one's way right. What does the undecided or moderate voter take away from that? What advice would you have for them?
Well, I think Barack Obama is trying to suggest that he's not way to the left. He definitely was pulling pretty hard to the center last night. He wouldn't say kind of a strong support of gay marriage, although he was talking about gay rights. He wouldn't talk about gay marriage in terms of supporting it. He was talking about, you know, public education in a way that sounded much more conservative. And he was the first one to bring up the idea of liberalism in order to distance himself from it. So here's a guy who I think is definitely looking forward in his electoral future and starting to try to appeal to the moderate voters.
What would you like to see tonight from the candidates, and what do they need to accomplish in this last debate?
Several things. I mean, John Kerry has really got to go beyond the numbers in talking about the economy. Americans in the swing states really care about the economy, but given the way that numbers and that unemployment figures are given, you can't just give the numbers. He's going to have to humanize it. He's going to have to do what they haven't done in any of the debates yet, which is to really connect kind of with a sense of compassion and caring about, you know, the very difficult circumstances that Americans face right now. A big answer to that question would be that when we as a public really decide that we want to put the rules of the game on the table and not just talk about how these individual candidates might be doing work within the constraints of the Electoral College, but ask some tough questions about how the Electoral College disenfranchises huge groups of voters so that anybody who's in a solidly blue state or a solidly red state from 6 months out, 9 months out, gets ignored over the course of a presidential election. And I think that until we really put that on the table as a set of, you know, possibilities for us to talk about, yeah, there will be money spent, and I think that if Kerry can manage in the debates, which are coming up very soon, to, you know, to give himself kind of a personality that voters can respond to, and give himself some language that the voters can remember, that, you know, that will increase his lead in states where it's already solid and maybe narrow the lead that the president has in the other states. But until we really deal with the question of the Electoral College, there's always going to be this imbalance.
Because we, you know, when we start thinking in the millions and the tens of millions, it's easy to think, well, you know, you only lost a few thousand, but each one of those votes was somebody's sacrifice that day, was time spent away from someone's family, was time spent, and in fact, for black folks, it was more sacrifice, and it's profoundly immoral and deeply unfair and essentially undemocratic that some citizens should have to work so much harder to vote than others.
Professor or neither?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm partisan to the extent that I really, really love black folks. And I'm really interested in issues that matter to the African American community, often which end up being addressed by the Democratic Party, but not exclusively. So for me, I guess I'm partisan in terms of I really care about the voice of the people, and particularly the voice of African Americans, which is often unheard, marginalized in this country.
Professor, we have about 30 seconds. Why or how did the Republicans win?
I think the Republicans won by telling a story about morals and values. It's a story that we could have told. We could have talked about how it's immoral for some people to take longer to vote than others. We could have said that we render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. We could have talked about how it's immoral to talk about a culture of life while perpetuating policies of death, and we didn't do it.
We didn't do it. So, 5 seconds left. You're going to work for the next 4 years to try to make polling easier, voting easier in this country?
I'm going to work for the next 4 years to get out whatever ideas there are out there that makes democracy work.
Professor Harris-Lacewell, thank you for University of Chicago. Appreciate that.
Thank you.